Welcome to the Broadway Shuffle with Clayton and Zyler. I am Brennan. We are missing Conrad tonight. He's in the middle of an NIL negotiation. He's on a holdout period with the Broadway Shuffle. Won't be able to make it tonight. But wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we are glad you are here. If this is your first time, around 50% of people that listen to our show do not subscribe. So make sure to subscribe. And if you are a loyal listener, we appreciate you checking out the show every week, and we're glad you are here too. Clayton, what is our first word tonight, man? Get us into the episode. What do you got for us? I see the Mavs veteran hat tonight. What you in your fields tonight, or what do you got going?
Yeah, man, I decided to bring out the new hat, Mavs 24-25 veteran. I successfully served on this season that was very detrimental. The hat doesn't hit as hard now that we have the number 1 draft pick, but made it through the season, so I decided to bring out the hat.
Big guns.
That is, yeah. The hat game tonight on the pod is strong. Z, you've got a Hidden Ranch Valley hat on.
Yeah, Hidden Valley Ranch. It was I snagged it from a booth at a conference I was at earlier. So Hidden Valley Ranch, repping the brand.
God, you guys,
Ranch
man.
conference.
Was it a hidden? Was it a ranch?
No. I was not at a ranch conference. I was at a restaurant leadership conference. But if I could get an invite to a ranch conference, I would go. So if anybody's listening that can hook me up with that, let me know.
That's a great idea. I love that, man. Well, that's a great hat. Well, tonight we're going to be getting into our wide receiver and running back room for Texas Tech. What do we need to know? Breakout potential players and key returners. We'll get into all that. I mean, this is obviously something, the Micah Hudson news was huge. Him leaving, coming back, returning. Where does Micah Hudson fall into this class of receivers? And then obviously with Quinton Joyner coming over from USC, joining the running back room of Jacoby and Cameron Dickey. Excuse me. I always get that confused. Cameron Valdez, Cameron Dickey. And what that room looks like. There's a lot of excitement for these skill position groups. Z, I guess, just to start right away, let's just start with Micah because it was such a big story, him leaving, transferring, coming back. What does Micah's role look like coming in? Does he factor in this year with his receiving core, or is it going to look more similar to what it was last year?
Man, this is going to be really unlike me to make some sort of statement like this. I actually think he has a good year for you. I know that the sensible thing and the pessimistic view would be to say, he's got to prove it. He's got to show it on the field. I think he's going to be good for you this year. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. I think he's going to have to earn it. He's not even listed on the official roster right now. If you go to, Texas Tech's 25 roster. And I know he's on it's weird with the house revenue rule, but he's on some sort of walk-on status, like having to earn his way back on the team, something like that. I'm not familiar with all the details, but, I think there's an opportunity for him. There is a kind of a gap for you at the slot receiver, which is where he kind of naturally fits. I know you, and we'll get into this, but you brought in Roy Alexander from Incarnate Word. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year, 13 touchdowns, 100 catches. But, I don't think he's the answer long term. I think Micah has an opportunity there. I think it would be really tough for him to beat out a guy like Caleb Douglas, maybe a guy like Reggie Virgil. They just offer different skill sets than what he has. But I think there will be plenty of opportunity for him. And I'm going to actually project him to be a solid player for you, maybe 400 to 500 yards this year. I think that would be an excellent season in my mind. That could be totally wrong, but I'll go optimistic here.
I like that. He had 8 catches, 123 yards last year. I love telling the story because the first game of the season, we did an over-under Micah Hudson, 5 catches, 50 yards, and he overed that for the whole year. And so obviously, Clay, tempering expectations here, but you do return key guys like Caleb Douglas and Coy Aiken. So there is still some continuity in this receiver room. Do you expect those guys to kind of take a leadership role, or are you expecting a Reggie Virgil or an Alexander to kind of step in and take the mantle as your best receiver on this team?
I still think Caleb Douglas is going to be the best receiver on the team. I think he's probably one of the better returning receivers in the conference. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Virgil be like your number 2 and be close in yardage to Douglas. But I think, Douglas will be the first option on the majority of plays. And then I expect Coy Aiken also to be, one of the leaders of the room, even if his stats are not, I guess, more than Virgil's.
Yeah, and this was something, or Z, sorry, but with Coy, just real quick, he moved to the slot this year, and with Hudson and all these transfer portals, there's a lot of moving parts, and we're still getting into summer camps, coming up soon, so things can change. Is he still slotted there now? Is that where Coy is still at, you think? And is that where he will start the year?
I think they'll play a lot of positions, and I think you'll see plenty of 10 personnel where we throw 4 wide receivers out there, and it's not a traditional 11 with a running back, a tight end, and 3 wide receivers. I think Coy can play all of those spots. I think the scheme is designed for those guys to move around. So traditional XYZ terminology, or H, whatever you want to call that, slot receiver, I think they may play more snaps at a certain position, but I think they'll move those guys around frequently. We saw Coy on the outside plenty last year. I think he's more fit as an inside guy, personally. But that's kind of my expectation there is, 50% of the time we're going to have 3, and then maybe 30% of the time maybe 20% of the time we'll have 4 wide receivers out there.
Yeah, and you obviously, with Coy, Caleb, Micah, the other returner, but you lose Josh Kelly. And so you had a security blanket with Josh last year. You also lose Jalen Conyers. We'll get into tight ends with the offensive line group as preview in a later date, if you're curious why we're not talking tight ends on this episode. So Josh Kelly was kind of your big safety blanket, came up in a lot of key moments last year. Do you think this will be a replacement by group, with like multiple receivers, or do you think one of these Caleb's or Coy will step up and have 1,000-yard receiving season and just be like the best guy on the team, the go-to receiver? Or do you think this will be more of a by association success
committee
for this? By committee. That's right. That's what I was looking for. A by committee for the group.
I can't tell. Josh was so, probably he's going to be one of those guys like 4 years from now. I'm going to like forget that he played for us and he had 1,000-yard season. Like, he was your leading receiver last year. He had 1,000 yards. He was obviously Barron's go-to guy. I can't decide if I think this receiving room is better than last year's or not. I think, Caleb Douglas was right behind Kelly as far as yards go. He was right at about 900, and Kelly was just at above 1,000. So really not a huge difference there. Douglas is the more explosive athlete, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think this room right now is better on paper than last year, or worse? I can't really quite get a read, which probably means it's about the same.
I honestly kind of think it depends on Micah Hudson. Like, I think going into last year, we probably viewed that one a lot more favorably than we do this one going into this season. But that's because we expected a lot out of Hudson. And I feel like now, seeing his freshman year and then transferring out, coming back in, I know you already said you're going to slay him for like 400 to 500 yards, but for me, it's kind of like I forget that he's on the team. Like, I'm not expecting a bunch. And in that scenario, I feel like last year's looked better, but this year's might be better in reality.
Yeah, that's kind of where I go, because I was weird last year. I wasn't really high on Caleb Douglas. I'm always skeptical of like the down SEC transfers that played like 3 years and didn't really cut. I'm always like, are you kind of just a bust? And so I was kind of down on Caleb Douglas. I was way higher on Josh Kelly, and I was kind of wrong on that side, but I was also way too high on Micah Hudson. So I don't know.
I'll say this. I think they'll be better, Z, by the fact that your offensive line will hopefully be improved. Barron's arm will be a little bit better than last year, we hope. And you've got more with the group, like the Reggie Virgil, hopefully a better Micah Hudson. You've now had 2 years in the system with like Caleb and Coy and Micah with Barron. So timing should be better. You've got a full summer camp. I think there's a lot of expectations going in where it's like this should click better. There were a lot of times last year with the offense where it looked like, man, they just don't seem to be on the same page about some things. It looked a little rough. It was not always pretty, obviously, in a lot of situations. If that's replaced, I think the receivers will just naturally look better. Now, whether that turns into different production, I don't know. But I do feel like because of what you're bringing into this roster, I hope that at least the numbers would be more improved.
So do you think more than, what did Barron have last year? And I know some of it went to the tight ends, but let's say, more than 3,000 yards receiving to this group. Let me find the total receiving yards last year.
If he had 3,300 passing yards, he had 28 touchdowns, 7 picks. If you're looking, I'm sure Conyers and John Carlos had a portion of that, obviously, but I do think that the receiving core was a bulk of that. And there was moments. Caleb Douglas, I think of the Arizona game. He had a great catch. Obviously, Josh Kelly had some big catches against Iowa State. Coy Aiken had a big run against Cincinnati last year. Like, there were moments, where these guys did step up, but there was not consistency through 12 games. And the offense, you can blame offensive line, you can blame quarterback, you can blame scheme, whatever it is. There just wasn't enough consistency. And I think there were drops. Like, Caleb Douglas, for as good as he was, struggled with drops last year. And is that going to be better? And you can't afford that. You cannot afford to lose games on your own this year. We're not going to accept that. And so I think if receivers are struggling with drops, if you're mistiming on routes, if Barron's missing throws and these guys aren't understanding like where Barron's going with the football. Like all that we'll be able to see, I think, pretty early on.
Yeah, no, actually. So yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. But it was about 2,900 yards from the receiving group last year. Kind of weird with the bowl game. Total passing yards was like 39,000 or 3,900 last year. And I was like, how did that happen? But I forget. Will played a half and then played a bowl game. But yeah, I think you're right. And I don't want to overlook, there's a couple guys I want to shout out. Roy Alexander, I watched his stuff. You never know with the FCS guys when they're burning corners and secondaries. It's like, well, is that just because you're playing, the guy who was second string for Houston North Shore? Never really, what's your competition like? That's, the same question that I have about Reggie Virgil. He played 3 games against, I think it was Northwestern, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame, and he only had, I think, barely over 100 yards. I need to look and check that. He had 120 yards in 3 games against Power 4 teams and 1 catch against Notre Dame. So, is he going to struggle with better athletes at this level? And then, there's some of the younger guys, TJ West, Kelby Valson, Tyson Turner even. And then you got guys like Michael Dever, you got Leighton Stone kind of sitting, waiting in the wings. Now, those two are true freshmen. I'm not necessarily expecting much from them this year, but they at least went through spring ball. So they've run the scheme. They've run the routes. They've got a better chance than, say, a guy like Tristan Gentry, who just enrolled, a couple weeks ago. So maybe one of those guys breaks through. This doesn't really feel like a room, though, that's going to have unless it's Micah Hudson, is going to have a redshirt freshman breakout season or something like that. That's not necessarily what I'm expecting.
In Kelby, we were, people were really excited about him last year. He got some minutes against Oklahoma State or some possessions against Oklahoma State, and in the bowl game, he, like the teams back in the day, like the Detron Lewises. So like you had the Crabtrees and you had the Lyle Longs and you had the Hicks and all that, but then you had your Detrons, and you had your kind of guys like. Is there a guy on this year's team that could be that for you? Like the sneaky good, like one of the, that guy's raw. Like you can tell he's not he's not number 1, but he could be number 1 on other teams. Do you feel like you have that on your roster this year?
Man, I don't know. I think you're just hoping that you have a number 1. I'm hoping that you do have a Lyle Leong, heck, I'd settle for an Erica Zukanma. You're hoping that Caleb Douglas can be that. He's got the athletic build to potentially be that. Maybe he can be a guy that's, I'm trying to think of a good Big 12 comp for him in the last couple of years. Something like, who's the kid from Baylor that was really good? Josh, not Hawkins, Josh Cameron. He's kind of got that build. Maybe he could be that for you, like a really physical, athletic receiver. Think of like a discount brand like DK Metcalf in the college world. Like that would be really cool. I'll worry about the number 2 after that. I want to make sure that we have an alpha.
Yeah, you care more about the alpha first. Yeah, Clay, when you're looking at this group, who do you think the most important returning player is for Barron? Like the success of coming off of surgery, a new offensive line. Like is Barron's safety blanket? We've always had like the Cowboy Coy and Barron. It just seems like, they're buddies, they're good friends. Do you think it is Coy? Like that's who he's going to look to kind of replace Josh in terms of, okay, I'm getting pressured. I feel it on my backside. I got to find number 8. Or do you think it's Caleb or maybe it's Mike or maybe a tight end? Like who's the most important in your mind returning player from this group?
Yeah, I feel like I'm spamming the same answer, but I think it's definitely Caleb Douglas. And I think all the points you brought up about Coy are definitely accurate. But I think for the offense as a whole, like you need Douglas to be the guy, like kind of as Zyler said, you need him to be an alpha. I think Coy to me is like a 2B receiver, and not meaning that as a slight, but like if you want to have like a top 15 offense, he feels like he needs to be like tied for the second option on the team and not the first dude. But I definitely agree with you that like it seems that Barron has the best chemistry with him, which is obviously a good thing. That's not a bad thing, but I think you need Douglas to be that guy.
He had the most touchdowns last year. I mean, they went to him in big moments. He's just not and I like Coy. I think you turned a under recruited guy into a really good player. He just doesn't have that like explosive athleticism that I think you want from some of your guys with Yak and different things like that. But great possession receiver, somebody that if he gets lined up on a linebacker or like a bad nickel corner, like he's going to do really well. If he has to deal with Travis Hunter or lock down corners like that, it's going to be a rough day for pretty much every receiver in that scenario. But I don't feel as good about him breaking away and making plays on somebody like that.
Yeah. So final question before we transition to running backs is who do we feel like has the most to prove? Is it Micah?
I think it might be Virgil, considering like you kind of brought him in to be like the second option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's such a boom bust player. Like I feel like his production is going to be heavily reliant on whether Barron can throw a good deep ball. Like it's truly, you'd see like a stat line. It's like this guy exploded for 150 yards on 3 catches, and it's like he'll have like a 90-yard touchdown, a 20-yard catch, and a 30. Like he's just not he's not a volume guy, so he's going to have to hit on some of those explosive plays, and a lot of that's dependent on the quarterback and offensive line. So he has a lot to prove to me, though. The production against the Power 4 teams was not as good as I would have liked. Got all the talent in the world. I mean, OU was after him. Florida State was after him. You fended off some really good programs for him. I got high hopes, but it's just I need to see it against big boy football before I really count on him.
Yeah, that's always a concern with Group of 5 and lower level Division I schools. Is this guy a product of who he played against, and can he compete with the big boys? That's always something to be interested in, especially for a Tech. I mean, you have Hunter Zambrano on the line coming from a smaller school. There's it's not all Power 4 transfers that you did get, so that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, and so when I think about these rooms and when I write about these rooms, I try to grade on kind of 4 things. So recruiting, what was your kind of star rating coming either out of the portal, out of high school? What have you done already? So maybe take a little bit off for FCS production. How have you graded out on a play-by-play basis? What's the depth of your room look like? Like, what is it after your number 1 and your number 2 and your number 3? What does your 2 deep look like? And then what's the upside? Is it a room that's just like, yeah, they've maxed out their potential. They're all 5th-year seniors and you've seen them do it, but it's just not that good. Like, and on a scale of 1 to 20, with 20 being the absolute best of the best, all 5 stars that all went for 1,000 yards last year for Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, and 0 being, obviously the worst, and 10 being like right around Power 4 average. So let's say Syracuse or Virginia Tech's wide receiver room. Where do you kind of put this room if you had to put a number on it?
For 2025, I would put it. I mean, I put it around like a 13. Like I think it'd be above average. Good, I think that you've got a lot coming. I really do think that Caleb and Coy haven't in the system. I know Coy's been for a couple of years, but growing and emerging as a receiving group with Barron returning, hopefully fully healthy, and that just the continuity and the relationship building and the connection of that, which I think that's big for this group. And so because of that, I think they're going to be an above average receiving group in the Big 12.
Okay, Clayton.
Yeah, I'd probably go slightly higher than that. I forgot what your constraints were on like the good tier, but I think it's definitely a good receiving room. I'd say like around 14 and a half. But, like Caleb Douglas is legit NFL like talent. He's going to be preseason second team, first team all Big 12. If Micah Hudson does some of the stuff that you expected him to do last year and then Virgil hits, that's like a very good trio. And I haven't even mentioned Coy, so I put it like in between average and elite, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's where you'll grade out really strong is one, the returning production side. You've seen Caleb do it. You've seen Coy do it. It's not like Reggie has never played a snap before. Roy's experience. You've got, probably 4-ish guys that you feel good about. But the thing that I really love giving rooms high marks for is like taking high upside swings. I think a guy like Reggie Virgil's a high upside swing, maybe a lower floor, but a higher ceiling. Same with Micah. If it works out with Roy Alexander, I'm not like, oh my goodness, this is a first team All-American. Like if it works out with Micah Hudson, that is like hey, this dude is a NFL draft pick next year.
Right.
And I love when guys, even if sometimes it doesn't work, I love when teams take swings like that. Don't necessarily just shoot for the high floor, swing for a high ceiling prospect. And I think that's what they've done with some of these ads. I think Reggie and Micah really are that. And I think Caleb can be that too. Coy is one of those players, exceptionally high floor, probably a lower ceiling, but you're going to get a very consistent production out of him. You just kind of know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
That's at least how I view it. People may disagree.
I don't disagree with you there at all. Well, let's transition to running backs. First, if you're still watching this video and you have not subscribed, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow tremendously, and we really appreciate it. Running backs, obviously you lose Taj Brooks. And what Taj meant to the program as a leader, as a player, just as when Joey talks about for the brand, Taj exemplifies that. And you don't have that guy in your room now. Now you do return Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey, 2 freshmen last year that did show some promise, had some great skill, big runs for you last year. two different style of runners, and then you supplement them by bringing in Quentin Joyner from USC, who did go to Taj's high school. So you're kind of hoping there is a continuation from, what Taj was able to do and go Manor ISD. And so with this room, this seems like a big year for these guys. Like Taj was a safety blanket. Like we've talked about the Washington State game a year ago. You don't have Taj, you look lost. And that was game 2. It just, when you needed a something to happen, you went to Taj Brooks. And you don't have that this year. And how will not just the running backs, but how will this team, how will this offense with a new offensive coordinator, how will they find that go-to guy like we talked about in receivers? What is your initial thoughts on the running back room, and what are your expectations? Like, what should we expect from fans to put on this running back room?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't mean this. Taj was just so good at cleaning up so many messes that happened at the line of scrimmage or with the play call. He'd get a run that was 3 yards, and it's like, that doesn't show up great on the stat sheet, but it really should have been a loss of 3. It should have been a loss of 1. It should have, and so his statistical impact, I think, is felt much more on the advanced side than on his counting stats. Because Jacoby and Cameron Dickey both had higher yards per carry. So you'd look at that and say, oh, dude, these guys are more explosive. And, a function of that is they get to play in more blowout situations. They're obviously going to be fresher, but they're also different styles of runner. Quentin Joyner, if you haven't watched him, Clayton, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. He's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none to me when I watch him. I don't see elite speed. I don't see elite elusive ability. I don't see elite wiggle. I don't see extreme durability, but he's really good at all of them. He's like a 7.5 and an 8 at every single running back trait, which I think is valuable. Where Taj, definitely not elite end speed, extremely durable, extremely dependable, not a great pass catcher for most of his career. Quentin's going to be better in a lot of those areas. Clayton, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, on Quentin Joyner in general, and then how you kind of see the workload getting split between these 3 guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of agree with you on your thoughts on Joyner. I feel like I would be, I don't know if concerned is the right word, but I would definitely be hesitant on this room if it was just him and we were kind of going into the season he's going to get 80% of the carries. Yeah. I think the reason I'm so high on it is because of Jacoby Williams and even Cam Dickey. I feel like Cam Dickey is the type of player that in the 2000s, if he was coming up as a sophomore or junior, you'd be really excited. And now he's kind of the third option in this backfield. But I think with Jacoby, I want to see us use him kind of how the Dolphins use Achane, try to get him as many passing touches as rushes. And then I think Joyner is fine. He's definitely not Taj, but he has more long form speed than Taj. I think you'll see a lot more 30 plus, 40 plus yard runs this year. But probably actually, I would say for sure more runs for losses, kind of like you mentioned.
He's gonna get stuffed way more than Taj ever did. I think all of these guys will.
Could you make the argument that it will be better for the offense overall to have to rely on multiple people, to not have a Taj? Or because it did feel like there were moments last year, and this is no discredit to Taj because it wasn't really his fault, but you would go to him and it's the defense knew you were going to him. And it was okay, you're blown up 4 yards back. Even Taj couldn't, there was just nothing you could do. And then there were great moments, you think of the Oklahoma State 4th down call where it's, Taj goes down to the right and runs for a touchdown. And you're that's genius. But there were times where it felt okay, we have to give this to Taj. They know it's going to Taj, but you didn't have the guys up front or even really anything to stop it. I wonder if it'll allow Leftwich to have more creativity with the offense. And I don't know. It's just something that I think as a unit, as a running back room, and as an offense, it might open you up to have to be more creative and spread the ball out more.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you have better pass catchers this year because I think Jacoby and Dickey took a while to get integrated. It was really kind of back quarter of the season that you saw them get a lot more work. I think they're going to be much more dynamic out of the backfield as far as that's concerned. A guy leaking out, everybody's covered, and Barron drops it down, and all of a sudden it's a 25-yard gain. I think you'll see way more of that this year than you did last year. I just don't think, I'll be shocked if you have a first or a second team all Big 12 player out of this room. I just think the work's going to get distributed. I'll be shocked if anybody gets more than 50% of the workload, where Taj was getting 80+% of the carries.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's if you Todd, you're just going to Todd. It's like you were spamming him sometimes 3 times on
Yeah,
a first down.
you just go
second down,
over and
third
over
down.
and over.
You
Yeah.
go over and over and over again, and you do a lot of zone read, and but you would have a lot of slow zone reads with Taj too, and a lot of inside zone. Like to your point, Z, and I'm excited to see this. Like, could we get Jacoby on the outside more quicker? Could
Yeah.
we dump down things? Could we do a little sweep or a toss or different things to get him in space? Because he is so dynamic, Clay. You're right. I mean, the run against Arkansas, just in the brief stints we did see him in the action, it was like, that guy's got speed that no one else on the field has. Like, that's what Jacoby has.
And I think even one of the things that they've talked about is lining him up in the slot. Like, he's going to play there, which I think is really fun. Just thinking about like an orbit route or a bubble, like using him as a decoy is going to be such a weapon for shifting linebackers and shifting the secondary. Even if I think there's a chance Jacoby sees the field the most, even if he doesn't technically get the most carries or touches, I think he's just going to be such a versatile weapon as far as moving the defense around pre-snap. That would be maybe one of my bold takes for the season, is that Jacoby gets the most snaps of any of the running backs.
Okay. So go ahead, Clay.
My bad. I was to your point on like the versatility of the offense and being unpredictable. I think like in the red zone, that's where this helps you out the most. Like I'm thinking, I don't know if this is in like Leftwich's offense, but if we're running like 22 personnel in the red zone with like Joyner, Jacoby, 2 tight ends, and then Caleb Douglas, like that's so many options, so many different things you could do with that. Whereas, last year, I think we were good in the red zone, but a lot of it was to Taj.
Which it was effective. And this was the whole Kitley conundrum where it's like when we got stuffed in 3rd and 1, you ran it with Taj, it would be like, oh, you knew what was coming. And if you didn't give it to Taj on 3rd and 1 and you missed, it's like, dude, you have an all Big 12 back. Why did you not just give it to him? It's like,
right.
I felt like
you can't win. You can't win that argument.
You can't win either way. And I felt like he got so caught up in that, like feeling like he has to give it to Taj, that it got really repetitive. And I'm not ragging on Taj. Taj was awesome. One of the best backs you've ever had. And I think your running back room is worse this year.
For sure.
I don't think, I'm not going to make the case that this is a better running back room than last year, even if it's more explosive, maybe some more dynamic ability. I would take Taj back in a heartbeat over. I would run last year's running back room back in a heartbeat.
Yeah, like you feel like if you had Taj on this roster with everything you had, you're feeling extremely good about the offense. Like you're like, this could be one of the top offenses in the conference, and it still might be, but there is still a lot to prove. Like we saw flashes with Diggy and Williams, but they were still freshmen. This is a new group, and Joyner is joining a new team. I am anxious for this, especially in pass block. Like when it comes to running back, that's something that makes me nervous with this group because, I mean, Dickey's big, and we've heard what he lifts, and he's got like he's a monster for a 19-year-old. But Joyner and Jacoby, they're not necessarily pro pass block type backs. Like this is not a specialty of theirs yet, and so that'll be interesting to me too. It's like, are you able to pick up the blitzing linebacker and protect Barron for that extra second and a half that he needs to get the ball out? I'm curious to see that with this group too. I know they're going to have big plays, but can you do the little things right? That'll be interesting to see because Taj did those things. He did those things well, and he just knew he was going to be physical, and he embraced the physicality. We need to see that from this group too.
That's a point really well taken. It's something that you rarely think about with the running back rooms is pass protection, and it's Taj's probably most underrated aspect is how good he was at it last year. Who's going to be that guy this year?
And he had to be. He had to be last year. He sometimes has to be your extra offensive lineman. Yeah,
that'll be the weird thing. Yeah, go ahead, Clayton.
With Jacoby specifically, like to your point on him staying on the field, like is he going to be able to be in the backfield by himself on 3rd downs? Like, because he has to be good at that.
Yeah, like on 3rd and 7, is Jacoby out there? Like, because oh man, dude, you could dump it out of the backfield, or is it you're worried about him pass blocking? Where I think Dickey will have a huge advantage because he's going to be one of the biggest running backs. Like Brennan said, that may give him a huge advantage in snap count. Do you guys know who won the carry competition between Dickey and Jacoby Williams last year? If you had to guess, who do you think it was?
I would guess Dickey.
Clayton, who do you got?
Because of Washington State.
I was going to say Jacoby. I'll say Jacoby.
It was actually dead even. They both had 41 apiece.
Wow. Okay.
both with almost 6 yards of carry though. So relatively explosive.
And dude, that's great. I mean, that's great for your pro that they did get those reps in, even with Todd. You know, when Todd obviously missed the Washington State game and Todd couldn't run the ball every time. I think it's good. That's a great experience to have coming into this year, but you need to be able to show that you're becoming more of an all-around back at a young age because you're still only sophomores. Like those kids,
true sophomores.
True sophomores. They were true freshmen last year. So that was something. It's like there's still a lot of growth to be had, and there needs to be some patience with this too. And that's where you hope Joyner can come in and pick up some slack. But this is still a very young group. You know, you don't have a Todd, you don't have a Sir Roderick Thompson. We're used to running backs in the system. Even with below average teams, you had Todd and Sir Roderick your last really 5.5, 6 years leading that room. Those are two great guys and great program guys and physical backs. This is a new era for Texas Tech running backs.
Yep. That's very well said.
So it'll be interesting, man. Well, that's great, guys. I mean, or go ahead.
Where do you grade? Where do you grade this room? You know, once again, same metric that we had last.
Man, it just to me, it's unproven. I think there's a lot of skill here, but there's just not enough production shown on the field yet. I'm cautiously optimistic about this group, but I'm going to grade them like an 11 out of 20. Like I don't think that they're there yet to show. They got to just show it. You know, it's early.
Go ahead.
I would say between 12 and 13, maybe. I do think like it might be like usually taking chances on guys who can make it to the NFL is a good thing. And I think Joyner for sure, and maybe Jacoby Williams with like the way that the NFL has been trending towards small, shifty backs. I think they both have a shot. And so that could pay off. But to your point, way lower floor than with Tosh.
Yeah, well, it's wild to me that you only have 3 scholarship running backs right now. It is these 3 guys, and then the walk-on here locally, Adam Hill, which I guess he won't be a walk-on anymore. But weird, you usually have 5 to 6 running backs, but this year, I mean, you'll be going in with 3 scholarship, which shouldn't be a problem. But you lose 1, now you start to get into okay, we have 2 running backs on the roster. You don't want to get in a Texas situation last year.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting this year with how much you brought in the transfer portal, and Joyner was obviously a part of that. But this room kind of got overlooked a little bit, you know, in the sense of like how exciting we're all excited about the offensive line. We're obviously thrilled with the defensive line and the skill position group. Though you brought it, you know, you got Terrence Howard on the on the tight end, NASCAR. You know, it'll be really interesting to see how this group forms as a unit and what the production really is, because we've been so, you know, focusing on defensive line, offensive line, but this is a very important unit that needs to play very well for you to achieve your goals this year. We can't overlook the running back position or the wide receiver position. That it'll come down to like, are these guys able to beat guys, you know, and make plays in space? Something that we have not had a lot of over the last few years. We need to see that happen, and we need people to emerge from this group. So I'm excited. I'm like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic about the running back and receiver room heading into 2025, but there's still a lot that needs to be proven on the field before I can just throw my hat and be like, well, this is the unit, you know, these are the guys who are going to get done. It'll be exciting. So, all right, man. Well, hey, before we get to Tech Trivia, we had a great episode on Monday that was released with the wives of Texas Tech football. We had on Coach McGuire, Coach Joey McGuire's wife, Debbie. We had on Coach Clay McGuire's wife with Jerry. And then we had on Jackie and Aisha as well. And so if you guys have not seen that episode, go check it out. It was a lot of fun. And as well, on our YouTube, under conversations, we have all of our interviews. So if you're new to the Broadway Shuffle, we've got President Skuvanek on there, Chris Level, Robert Givanetti, Todd Brooks, some names we mentioned here. So make sure to go to our YouTube channel and check out some of those conversations. And we've got plenty more exciting guests on the way as well. So Z, get to our Tech Trivia for us, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, you know, talking about running backs and receivers, I figured asking who's the all-time Texas Tech leading receiver would have been too easy of a question because everybody knows that, right? We all know who the career leading receiver is, right? Everybody's got that. You are correct, I believe, and I've got to find it now. You just want
to say Crabtree. You just like
you want to say
you
Crabtree
want to say it, but it's not. Yeah,
Crabtree had 2 seasons and Jakeem had 4 and only beat him by like 100 and something yards. But do you know the leading or the best single game rushing performance by a Texas Tech player in our history? It's pre-2010. I'll give you at least that hint.
Pre-2010. Oh man, dude, I love this guy so much. It's probably not him, but I want to say Baron Batch so bad. But I know it's probably not Baron Batch. But like, I love that guy, man.
The nostalgia for the first college football teams that you watch is like insanely hard to overcome.
It was just awesome.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean, was it Henderson?
It was not Henderson.
Dude,
that's a great guess.
Wow.
It's got to be someone from like the Spike Dyke days, I feel like.
It's probably the best running back that we've ever had in our system. He has 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 10.
Oh, was it Bam Morris?
It was not Bam Morris. Great guess though.
Wow. You got us stumped, man. Who is it?
Yeah.
It was Byron Hansford against Baylor in 1996. He went for 287 yards in a single game. That's
crazy.
That is a remarkable. He rushed for 2,000 yards that season.
We have not done that, but we have seen it done to us.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. We've been on the receiving end of that.
I know it's possible because I have seen too many games where that has happened.
Jalen Balash.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude.
It's always funny when I look at these record books and I see Sir Roderick Thompson in the top 10 of all-time leading rushers.
Like that's what I was saying. Like it's shocking
touchdowns, right?
How long he played for you and how productive he was. I mean, he really was. I think one of your most underrated running backs you've had in a long time. At Tech, and Todd played with him. It's just crazy. That went by really fast. So
as far as developing two guys that were like so lowly rated on the star ranking. I mean, those guys were both low 3 stars. Got excellent production.
And you did develop them well, and we hope the same with Jacoby and Cameron. So it'll be great. We'll be back on Monday for another. Are we doing another preview? I don't even know what we're doing Monday. We going O-line tight ends?
Probably.
We'll let you know.
We'll see.
But we'll be back on Monday. You guys enjoy the episode. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Broadway Shuffle. Wreck 'em.